My name is Emily Carter. One morning, my parents sent a group message asking me to step back from the family so things would stay peaceful. 3 days later, a bank froze assets with my name on them. If something like this has ever happened to you, I want to hear your story in the comments. My alarm hadn't gone off yet when my phone buzzed on the nightstand. Morning light was barely coming through the blinds of my Seattle apartment, the kind of gray that makes everything look unfinished. The screen lit up with the family group chat. The message was from my parents, sent at 6:12 a.m. "We think it would be best if you temporarily stepped back from the family to avoid causing disruption," it read. No greeting, no names, just that sentence, polished and distant, like a memo that forgot it was talking to a person. Before I could type anything, Sarah replied. "This is the right decision for everyone," she wrote. "Let's keep things calm and move forward." It sounded like something you'd paste into a shared drive after a meeting. I stared at it, then typed back, "What exactly did I do?" 3 dots appeared under my dad's name, then vanished. My mom answered instead. "Lately you've been making things tense," she wrote. "People feel uncomfortable." "Who?" I asked. There was a pause long enough for the coffee maker to click off in the kitchen. Then my dad replied, "We don't want to get into specifics." Sarah jumped back in. "There's no need to rehash everything," she said. "We just need space right now." Space from your own family, delivered before sunrise. Another message from Sarah followed. "There's also a paperwork meeting coming up," she added, "so this timing makes sense." "What paperwork?" I asked. She didn't answer that. Instead, a notification popped up showing an attachment had been added to the chat. A second later, it disappeared. "Sorry," Sarah wrote, "wrong file." No one asked if I'd seen it. No one explained what it was. I scrolled back up. The timestamp kept bothering me. My parents never texted this early unless someone was in the hospital. They both started work at 9. This had been drafted, reviewed, and agreed on while I was asleep. Another message came in from my mom. "We want to wrap things up by the weekend," she said, "for everyone's sake." Wrap what up was still unclear. I typed, deleted, and typed again. "Are you asking me not to come by the house?" I wrote. Before anyone could respond, the chat refreshed. Sarah's name disappeared. Then my parents' names followed. A system message replaced them. "You can no longer send messages to this group." The silence after that felt procedural, like being put on hold. No yelling, no slammed doors, just a clean removal. My name gone. Their decision preserved. The efficiency of it almost impressed me, in the same way automated systems thank you for your patience while denying your request. It was quiet, thorough, and final, which somehow made it worse than any argument ever. The first message came from my aunt before 8. "Your sister is just trying to hold the family together," she wrote. "You should take some time to rest." A cousin followed 10 minutes later. "Sarah's under a lot of pressure," he said. "It might be best if you let her handle things." By the time I reached my desk, 3 more variations had arrived. Different senders, same wording. No one asked what happened. No one asked what I'd seen. The story had already been distributed. Work didn't pause for family drama. A weekly planning meeting started on time, calendars open, voices steady. Halfway through someone else's update, my phone vibrated against the table. My dad's name flashed across the screen. I stepped into the hallway and answered. "Now's not a good time," I said. "This won't take long," he replied. "We just want to keep things from getting complicated." "I don't know what's complicated," I said. "I got removed from the family chat." A breath passed on the line. "Sarah's managing communication right now," he said. "That's probably for the best." "For who?" I asked. "She understands the bigger picture," he replied, then added, "You always take things personally." The call ended without a goodbye. When I returned to the meeting room, no one commented on my absence. The agenda moved on. It struck me how quickly systems absorb disruption and continue. During lunch, an email popped up in an old inbox I barely used anymore. The subject line read, "Invoice, legal consultation." It wasn't addressed to me, but my address was listed under billing contact. The name requesting services sat clearly at the top: Sarah Carter. I opened the PDF. The firm name looked familiar. I scrolled to the bottom and saw the signature. It matched the name Sarah had dropped in the group chat the day before, like a detail no one was supposed to notice. The invoice listed hours billed, dates, and a line that said, "Document Review and Revision." No explanation of which document, just numbers and confidence. From the parking garage, Marcus answered on the second ring. "Do you have anything in writing tied to shared property?" he asked. "No," I said, "at least not on me." "Anything from when you were younger," he said. "Emails, contracts, tax forms." "I'd have to look," I said. "Look fast," he replied. That was the entire conversation. No reassurance, no sympathy, just instruction, which was oddly stabilizing. Back at my desk, I forwarded the invoice to the law firm and asked for clarification. The reply came an hour later, crisp and detached. "We hope this message finds you well," it began. "Our firm represents the Carter family in an ongoing matter." Sarah was CC'd, so were my parents. I wrote back, "I'm part of that family," I said. "I haven't authorized representation." The response didn't address that. "All communications will be handled through designated representatives," the email said. "Please direct further questions accordingly." It was impressive in a way, how cleanly language could erase someone. More messages arrived from relatives through the afternoon. Each one landed like a gentle push toward the same conclusion. Sarah's always been the responsible one. She's protecting your parents. You don't want this to turn ugly. No one mentioned paperwork. No one mentioned money. The word family did a lot of work without explaining anything. Marcus called again as I walked to my car. "Check the invoice date," he said. I pulled it up. "It's from last week," I said. "Before the group message," he replied, "and before you were asked to step back." Traffic crawled. My dashboard clock blinked 3:58. "There's more," he added. "Scroll down." A line near the bottom listed a scheduled meeting. Friday, 10 a.m. Purpose: execution of revised documents. "That's the deadline," Marcus said. 3 days. I glanced at the clock again. 72 hours, give or take, before something finalized without me. The car ahead tapped its brakes. My phone buzzed with another email notification from the same law firm, polite and perfectly timed. The storage drive sat at the back of my closet, wedged between an old router and a box of cables I'd stopped labeling years ago. It took a few minutes to find the right adapter, another few to remember the password I'd used back when password hygiene meant adding a number at the end. Folders loaded slowly. College documents, old resumes, scans of things my parents had insisted were important enough to keep, but not important enough to explain. One folder was labeled Property. Inside it sat a PDF dated 8 years back. I opened it and recognized the layout immediately. A shared ownership agreement. My parents' signatures at the bottom. My name printed clearly, not handwritten, not added later. Just there, clean and ordinary. The date pulled my attention next. It matched the summer Sarah had told everyone I wasn't stable yet. The year she handled phone calls for my parents and framed it as helping. The year decisions started happening without me because they were supposedly temporary. The file metadata showed it hadn't been touched since then. That's when the deleted attachment from the group chat snapped into place. The wrong file. The quick apology. The way no one followed up. It hadn't been a mistake. It had been a draft. My phone rang. Sarah didn't wait for a greeting. "You need to stop," she said. "This is getting out of hand." "I found the agreement," I replied, "the one with my name on it." A pause, shorter than politeness would require. "That document doesn't mean what you think it does," she said. "You're fixating on details." "I'm listed as an owner," I said. Her tone shifted, the soft edges gone. "If you keep pushing," she said, "you're going to create consequences you won't like." "For who?" I asked. "For everyone," she replied, "and especially for you." The call ended there. No goodbye, No follow-up text. I forwarded the agreement to the law firm and asked a single question. Can you explain why this document is being revised without my involvement? The email sent successfully. A moment later, an automated reply came back. Thank you for your message. I am currently out of the office and will return next week. The timing was almost impressive. The system had manners, even when people didn't. An hour later, Sarah messaged me directly. You just made this harder than it needed to be, she wrote. They were willing to keep things simple. Simple had started to sound expensive. The shared family drive stopped syncing shortly after. Files froze, then vanished one by one. A notification popped up. You no longer have access to this folder. I refreshed it twice, then checked permissions. My name was gone. At the same time, a new email arrived from the firm, this one not automated. All prior documents will be reviewed under current representation, it said. Please refrain from contacting staff directly. Sarah was CC'd again. Marcus called while I was still staring at the screen. They locked you out, he said, not asking. Yes. That means the document matters, he replied. And they know it. What do? I asked. Don't argue, he said, and don't warn them. The call ended there. He didn't elaborate. I copied the agreement onto a separate drive and printed a physical copy at the corner shop, feeding bills into the machine while the clerk watched from behind the counter. The printer jammed halfway through and beeped like it needed sympathy. By the time the pages slid out, my phone buzzed again. Another message from Sarah. This is your last chance to step back gracefully, she wrote. If you don't, things will escalate. Escalate had already happened. It just hadn't been announced yet. I opened the family storage link one more time. Same message. Access denied. The bank notification arrived without warning, flagged as urgent, but written like a weather update. It informed me that assets connected to an internal dispute were temporarily frozen pending review. No accusation, no explanation. Just a pause imposed by someone who didn't need permission. I called the number listed at the bottom. Is this a mistake? I asked. The representative spoke carefully. There's an ongoing matter tied to ownership, she said. Until that's resolved, access is limited. Who initiated it? I asked. I'm not able to share that, she replied. You should speak with your legal representative. I didn't have one. Not officially. That detail didn't matter. An hour later, an email from the law firm confirmed what the bank wouldn't say. A document had been executed that morning. My name wasn't on it. The message was brief. Please note that revised authorization has been completed under applicable provisions, it read. Further inquiries should be directed through counsel. Attached was a summary page. I recognized my parents' signatures. Sarah's initials sat beside them, neat and confident. A clause referenced in the footnotes caught my attention. It allowed certain actions without unanimous consent under specific conditions. Conditions I had never been told about. My phone buzzed again. This time it was my mother. Please don't make this bigger than it needs to be, she wrote. We're exhausted. No mention of the bank, no mention of the signatures. What did you sign? I asked. A few minutes passed. Sarah explained it, she replied. It's temporary. Temporary had become a flexible word. Marcus met me outside the building where the law firm's address appeared on the letterhead. He didn't go inside. They finished it already, I said. Yes, he replied. That's how this works. They used a clause I didn't know existed. That's also how this works, he said. What do I do now? I asked. He leaned against his car and crossed his arms. Notice the pattern, he said. She creates urgency, then presents a solution, then tells everyone afterward. So this was planned, I said. Yes. There's nothing I can undo, I asked. Not today, he said, and not by reacting. That was all he offered. No reassurance, no alternative, just the shape of the problem. The library was open late, and it was close. I took a seat near the back, logged in, and opened the agreement again, the original one. My name still sat where it always had. That hadn't changed. What had changed was everything around it. Email sat unanswered. Access was gone. The bank had pressed pause. My parents had delegated their trust. Sarah had moved from explanation to execution. A notification popped up on my screen. Shared document updated. I clicked it out of habit, then remembered I couldn't open it anymore. Another message from my mother appeared. "Please stop," she wrote. "This is hurting your father." I didn't respond. The agreement stared back at me from the screen, unchanged and suddenly insufficient. It existed, but existence wasn't leverage. Not anymore. A group of students passed behind me, laughing quietly. Someone dropped a pen. The library continued doing what it was designed to do, indifferent to whatever was collapsing elsewhere. The meeting time echoed in my head. Friday, 10 a.m., 2 days away. Sarah hadn't asked for my signature. She'd removed the need for it. The screen dimmed as the system warned me it would log out soon. I saved the file again, more out of habit than necessity. The cursor hovered over the close button. This approach hadn't worked. Emails, questions, evidence sent too early. Everything had been answered with silence or speed. The laptop clicked shut and my reflection replaced the document on the black surface. Around me, chairs scraped lightly against the floor as people packed up their things. Standing up, the agreement stayed open on the screen in my mind, but the path forward didn't look like another message or another request. Whatever came next wouldn't start with asking to be included. The apartment stayed exactly the way I left it that morning. No music playing, no lights turned on, except the one above the kitchen sink. The mail sat unopened on the counter, a thin stack that already felt outdated. Shoes stayed by the door. Nothing moved unless I touched it. Dinner didn't happen, neither did any calls. The laptop opened to the same documents I'd been staring at all day. The agreement, the invoice, the email thread that kept circling back to nothing. Everything lined up neatly, which somehow made it worse. Chaos would have been easier to argue with. For the first time since the group message, there was nothing demanding an immediate response. No new notifications, no deadlines blinking at the corner of the screen. Just the quiet fact that the approach I'd taken had failed completely. The mistake wasn't missing a document. It was believing I didn't need one. Growing up, paperwork had been treated like something you handled for strangers. Family ran on trust, on verbal agreements, on "we'll figure it out later." That belief had followed me into adulthood without being questioned. When Sarah spoke for everyone, it seemed efficient. When decisions happened without me, it felt temporary. Silence had been framed as maturity. None of that held up once money entered the room. The second mistake had been letting Sarah translate reality. She spoke in summaries, turned conversations into bullet points, made choices sound like consensus. It had been easier to let her. Easier to stay focused on work, on logistics, on not rocking things. That habit looked responsible until it wasn't. The third mistake sat right next to those two, confusing restraint with progress. Every time I chose not to push back, the gap widened. Every time I waited for clarification, someone else filled in the blanks. That pattern was clear now, painfully clear. Not in a dramatic way, just factual. The phone buzzed once, then stopped. A text from Marcus. "Coffee tomorrow morning?" The cafe was half full when we sat down. No small talk. He slid his phone across the table and turned the screen toward me. "That invoice you showed me," he said. I ran the account number. It wasn't long, just a string of digits and a routing code. "The payments didn't come from your parents," he continued, "and they didn't come from Sarah." I looked at the screen. "Who did they come from?" I asked. "That's the part you'll need to confirm," he said. "But it's not a family account." No sympathy followed, no raised voice. He took a sip of coffee like this was a routine update. "If you keep treating this like a family disagreement," he added, "you'll keep losing." "What does that mean?" I asked. "It means you stop trying to prove you're right," he said, "and start proving what's true." That was the closest thing to advice he offered. The check arrived faster than expected. I paid without looking at the total and stood up first. Outside, the morning moved on like nothing had shifted. People walked dogs. Someone argued about parking. Life didn't pause for realizations. Back at the apartment, the documents went into a single folder. Originals scanned, copies labeled. No emotion attached to any of it. Just sequence. There was a cost to this path. That part didn't need spelling out. Once things crossed into records and audits, nothing went back to how it had been. Even if I won, whatever that ended up meaning, there would be no return to casual conversations or shared holidays. That version of family depended on trust staying untested. The choice wasn't between peace and conflict anymore. It was between being erased quietly or being present officially. The laptop booted up again. A new tab opened to the Washington State Public Records portal. Search fields waited patiently, neutral and efficient. No opinions, no loyalties, just input and results. The search results didn't stop at one entry. They stacked downward, each line tied to the same account number Marcus had flagged. Business filings, amendments, a limited partnership registered 2 years earlier, then revised again. The address matched Sarah's condo. The amounts were larger than anything she'd ever mentioned. A separate tab pulled up liens. That was when the picture widened. The family property wasn't the prize. It was the collateral. Another document loaded slowly, then settled. A loan application tied to an investment group I didn't recognize. The guarantor section referenced supporting assets, listed generically, but the dates lined up with every moment Sarah had insisted on urgency. The summer I was unstable. The fall, she started joining my parents' appointments. The winter, she suggested simplifying ownership. The phrasing from the group chat shifted meaning all at once. Step back to avoid disruption hadn't been about peace. It had been about removing my name before outside eyes started asking questions. The weekend deadline wasn't for family clarity. It was for a bank. An email arrived while I was still scrolling, from the law firm. Please be advised, it said, that updated documentation has been submitted to the financial institution. A second email followed within minutes, this one from the bank. Miss Carter, it began. We have received notice that you are no longer involved in management or ownership of the relevant assets. The language was careful. No accusation, just assumption. I replied immediately. That's incorrect, I wrote. I am a named co-owner. The response came back faster than expected. Based on information provided by authorized parties, the bank wrote, your prior documentation is no longer valid. Attached was a scanned copy of the agreement I'd sent earlier. A note in the margin read, superseded. The phone rang. The caller ID showed the law firm again. This is to clarify, the attorney said. The document you submitted doesn't carry weight without the original. I have the original, I said. Do you? He asked. Our records indicate it was never formally recorded. It was signed, I said. Signed and recorded are different, he replied. At this point, the institution will rely on the most recent filing. And that filing removed me, I said. Yes, he replied, under an exception clause. Which clause, I asked. I can't discuss that with you, he said. You're not our client. The call ended politely. Another message came in from Sarah, short and direct. I told them you weren't involved anymore, she wrote. This didn't need to be messy. There was no mention of the investment, no mention of the loan, just a statement of fact delivered after the damage. The realization didn't land as shock, it landed as confirmation. This hadn't been impulsive. It hadn't even been particularly emotional. It was procedural. Years of incremental positioning, each step framed as helpful, each delay justified as temporary. The lawyer hadn't needed to know everything. My parents hadn't needed to understand the stakes. They only needed to be convinced that stability required trust. Another email arrived from the bank. We are conducting a final review, it said. A determination will be made within 48 hours. The clock started then. Not loudly, just a quiet acknowledgement that something larger than family dynamics was now in motion. I forwarded the chain to Marcus without commentary. His reply came back a few minutes later. That's bigger than I thought, he wrote, and older. There was nothing he could add that would stop it. No document he could pull, no call he could make. The system had already accepted Sarah's version as the default. Screenshots captured everything: timestamps, sender addresses, subject lines. A simple log started forming, not as evidence for an argument, but as a record. Each entry listed what happened, who initiated it, and when. No commentary, just sequence. The bank sent a calendar invite for a call the following afternoon. Sarah was included. My parents were included. I was listed as observer. Another message from my mother appeared, this one longer than the others. Sarah explained what's happening, she wrote. She says this will protect everyone. Protect had become a synonym for risk management. The agreement file sat open again, unchanged and increasingly irrelevant. Without the original recording, it was just a story I could tell, not a fact the system recognized. The investment filings continued loading in the background. More revisions, more extensions. The pattern held. Whenever one obligation tightened, another document shifted ownership slightly, just enough to satisfy a requirement. My phone buzzed once more. "We'll know more soon," Sarah wrote. "Try not to stress." The bank's final email sat at the top of the inbox, unread but visible. Decision pending. 48 hours. The bank conference room was smaller than expected. A long table, 6 chairs, a screen on the wall that stayed dark. Everyone arrived on time, which already told me something about who thought this meeting mattered. Sarah sat closest to the banker, posture relaxed. My parents took the seats beside her, aligned without needing to coordinate. The attorney joined by video, his face framed neatly, expression neutral. I was listed as an observer on the calendar invite, so I took the last chair without comment. The banker started. "Thank you all for joining," she said. "We're here to clarify outstanding questions regarding asset ownership and guarantees." No one mentioned family. Sarah spoke first. "We appreciate the bank's patience," she said. "There's been some confusion, but everything has been handled." Handled was her favorite word. The banker nodded and looked at me. "Ms. Carter," she said, "you indicated you had documentation you wanted to submit." I slid the folder across the table. "This is the original co-ownership agreement," I said. "It's signed, dated, and covers the property in question." Sarah glanced at it, then smiled slightly. "That agreement was symbolic," she said. "It was more of a family understanding than a binding document." The banker didn't react. She opened the folder and examined the pages. "Symbolic documents aren't usually notarized," she said. Silence followed, brief but noticeable. Sarah adjusted in her chair. "That was done for formality," she said, "at the time." I reached into my bag and placed another set of papers beside the first. "These are property tax records," I said. "They show consistent payments made from my account over multiple years." The banker compared dates, then signatures. "These payments align with the ownership period," she said. The attorney cleared his throat. "Payment alone doesn't establish control," he said. "The more recent filings supersede prior arrangements." "Then you'll want to see this," I said. A third document joined the stack. The banker read it carefully. "This shows no recorded transfer of ownership," she said, "and no removal of Ms. Carter as a co-owner." And Sarah leaned forward. "That's because the exception clause allowed action without unanimous consent," she said. "Which clause?" the banker asked. Sarah hesitated, then cited a section number. The banker typed it into her system, eyes scanning the screen. "That clause applies only if all parties are properly notified," she said. "Was Ms. Carter notified?" Sarah looked at my parents. My mother spoke quietly. "We assumed she knew," she said. The banker paused, then turned her attention back to Sarah. "There's another matter," she said. "Our review flagged the source of legal fees associated with these filings." Sarah's expression tightened. "The account used doesn't appear in your disclosures," the banker continued. "Can you explain why that account wasn't declared?" The question landed gently, almost politely. "Could you explain why this account was not disclosed?" the banker repeated. No accusation, just procedure. Sarah opened her mouth, then closed it. "That account is separate," she said finally. "It's unrelated." The banker tapped her keyboard again. The payments from that account directly funded revisions to documents tied to this asset, she said. That makes it relevant. The attorney spoke up. We can provide clarification offline, he said. That won't be necessary, the banker replied. We're separating this file. She looked at the screen, then back at us. Effective immediately, the family assets will remain frozen pending investigation, she said. Ms. Carter, she added, nodding towards Sarah, your filings will be reviewed independently. Sarah didn't respond. My parents stared at the table. My father folded his hands together, then unfolded them again. My mother's phone lit up, and she turned it face down without checking. The banker gathered the documents into a neat stack. We'll be in touch with next steps, she said. The meeting ended without ceremony. Chairs moved back. The video call disconnected. Papers were returned. Sarah stood, hesitated, then sat back down. For the first time since this started, there was nothing ready to say, no explanation queued, no version prepared for others. My parents didn't look at her. They didn't look at me either. The banker left the room, leaving us with the table and the consequences. No one filled the space. No one tried to smooth it over. I collected my folder and headed for the door while the silence held, intact and unanswered, waiting for someone else to decide how to break it. The updates came in pieces, never all at once. A letter from the bank confirming the freeze remained in place. Another from a different department using the word investigation without emphasis. Sarah's name appeared repeatedly, always followed by careful phrasing and no conclusions. Her project disappeared faster than it had appeared. The website went offline. The company registration switched to inactive. A search that once returned press mentions now led to compliance notices and generic placeholders. No one announced the failure. It simply stopped being discussed. Family messages slowed, then narrowed. Group threads went silent. Individual texts arrived less often and said less each time. When Sarah's name came up, it wasn't paired with praise or responsibility anymore. It was paired with risk, with words like exposure and consequences. My parents stopped forwarding explanations. They stopped asking me to help smooth anything over. Contact shifted to attorneys. Anything that mattered went through email headers and case numbers. Nothing arrived without structure. That was fine. Structure had been missing for a long time. One afternoon, I placed the spare house key into an envelope. The metal felt heavier than expected, worn smooth from years of use. I wrote the address carefully, added tracking, and slid it across the counter at the post office. Anything fragile, the clerk asked. No, I said. The receipt printed, long and impersonal. I folded it and put it in my wallet, then didn't look at it again. The phone number change took less than 5 minutes. New number entered, old number retired. A warning popped up about contacts and continuity. I confirmed the change anyway. An email arrived right after. Your changes have been saved. It didn't mention what had been lost along with them. Mail forwarding followed. Address updated. The system asked if I wanted to notify frequent senders. I unchecked the box. Anyone who needed the new address would have it through the proper channel. Marcus sent a short message. Looks like it's settling. It is, I replied. He didn't ask how I felt. That wasn't his role. He had shown me where to look. The rest had been execution. There was no final conversation with Sarah. No apology or confrontation waiting in the wings. Silence stretched between us, unbroken and deliberate. If she said anything at all, it went through lawyers. If she didn't, that also said enough. My parents reached out once, together. We hope you're okay, they wrote. We're trying to understand everything. I didn't answer right away. When I did, it was brief. All communication should go through counsel, I said. The message showed as read. No reply followed. Life filled the space quickly. Work deadlines returned to normal. Groceries ran out. Laundry needed doing. Ordinary things reclaimed attention the way they always do once a crisis stops demanding updates. The wind was strong at the waterfront that evening. Ferries moved in and out on schedule, unaffected by anything that had happened elsewhere. I stood near the railing with my phone in hand, scrolling through the last few notifications. Nothing new. No alerts, no reminders. The device went into my pocket instead of back to my hand. The habit had shifted without effort. Behind me, someone laughed. Ahead, the water moved steadily, indifferent and consistent. The city carried on, layered and busy, with room for people who knew how to keep records. I turned away from the harbor and started walking, leaving the wind at my back and the phone where it was, no longer waiting for it to tell me what came next.